After returning to my family, my health took a turn and my partner disappeared. The pulse oximeter screamed while my partner's phone went dark. I sat on a paper-covered bed under a humming light in urgent care below my family's street. My pulse read like a jackhammer, then like a lullaby, then like a dare. The nurse asked if I'd had caffeine. I nodded at the truth and shook my head at the cause. I'm Evan, 30, an EMT people call when minutes matter. I trust numbers. I trust timelines. I trust the way a symptom repeats when it wants you to listen. 2 weeks earlier, I moved back into the old house to help Aunt May after her knee surgery and to watch the furnace that clicks like an old man's sigh. My cousin Victor met me in the driveway with a grin and a clipboard. "It's so good you're home," he said, which is what people say when they need you to sign things. My sister Lena hugged me until my ribs believed in family again. Mara kissed my cheek and said, "We'll make it romantic," then spent the next days trusting the process, which is what people say when they want your questions to nap. The headaches started like small weather. By day 3, my chest felt crowded. By day 5, I could hear my heartbeat in my teeth. At night, the smoke detector slept, the carbon monoxide plug-in flashed okay, and the old house breathed like a bear. I told myself I was tired, not sick, and that worry wears the same jacket as wisdom until you check the label. At urgent care, the doctor explained anxiety like a folded brochure. I nodded because panic is real and bodies are loud when they want to be seen. But my work teaches me a different math. If the story doesn't balance, you look for the penny that rolled under the fridge. I asked for copies, vitals, SpO2 trends, EKG strip. The printer complained, then obliged. Paper steadies me. Paper forgives tired memory. I stepped out to call Mara. Her voicemail was a chirp. Her text bubble never bloomed. Victor pinged the family chat with confetti and a reminder about tomorrow's family stewardship meeting. I watched my breath make a ghost in the cold and counted to 10 like a child solving a grown-up problem. The oximeter tone still rang in my head like a stubborn alarm. The nurse asked if someone could drive me home, and Victor's SUV rolled up fast. He smiled too wide and said we had papers to finish. I left this house at 20 because silence had rules. In our kitchen, jokes were currency and questions were fines. Victor learned early to speak like a toastmaster. I learned to count breaths and map exits. Aunt May taught casseroles and caution. Lena translated sharp words into softer chores. When Mom got sick, the rooms filled with casseroles and opinions. When she died, the house kept the opinions and forgot how to feed people. I became an EMT because turning fear into action felt like stealing time back from a thief. So why return? May's knee, the furnace, the gutters, the door that swells in rain. Also because Mara said, it might heal something to go back. And I wanted that ordinary miracle where paint and patience fix more than wood. The first week passed like a truce. We tightened a hinge, ate soup, watched a game, and pretended winter wasn't pressing its face to the windows. Then Victor started scheduling things. Family stewardship, legacy planning, weekly check-ins. He joked in the group text, "Our ambulance prince will keep us alive between signatures." People reacted with laughing faces. Mara wrote, "He's just teasing." Teasing is kindness in costume until the mask slips. At dinner, he tapped his glass and said, "If Evan can read monitors, he can handle paperwork." Aunt May's mouth went thin. Lena's hands folded into a prayer that asked the room to behave. The house spoke in its old language. Basement wet, hallway too warm, carbon monoxide plug flashing, okay, like a kid eager to please, router blinking a rhythm I didn't recognize. Floorboards told a story about feet that walked when nobody watched. The mailbox delivered flyers for gutter guards and a glossy reverse mortgage brochure addressed to resident. Victor set it aside with 2 fingers like ink might stain him. That night, while I folded towels in the bright laundry room, my heart did a fast drum roll and then tripped. I sat on the dryer and breathed the way I coach strangers to breathe on curbs at 2 a.m. It passed, but the echo stayed. Lena texted me a selfie from Victor's couch captioned, "See? Calm." Her eyes were smiling, but something behind them watched the door. The first red flags were small enough to fold into a pocket. Lightheaded on stairs I'd climbed my whole life. Sleep that pretended to start and then drifted to the ceiling and stared back. A chest that felt like it had borrowed somebody else's rhythm. The carbon monoxide plug-in glowed green. The smoke detector blinked its sleepy eyelid. The furnace coughed and settled like an old dog. Dust, Victor said, waving a hand like a magician ending a trick. We'll get a service in spring. Mara's location went gray to save battery. Her texts began to sound like fortune cookies that didn't know me. Trust the process. Let the house love you back. Drink water, then decide. I did drink water. I also read the water bill and found a new line labeled basement dehumidifier rental I hadn't ordered. I asked Aunt May. She shook her head. Victor shrugged. Proactive, he said. Moisture is the enemy of resale. Resale? I had been home 10 days. Small charges started lining up on the shared card like obedient soldiers. $7. 99, $12. 50, $15. 03. Always at the hardware store near Victor's office. Always minutes after a family stewardship text. My router log began showing unknown devices that came and went at strange hours. The label Victor tablet flashed past one afternoon while I dozed on the couch and woke to footsteps on the porch. Doorbell video showed only the mailman and a wind that didn't know our names. I dismissed what I could because dismissal carries a weight limit. Then I doubted myself because doubt hates being idle. I replaced the plug-in's battery. It still smiled green. I replaced my pillow. My head still counted helicopters in the dark. At work, I checked my own vitals during a slow shift. Blood pressure a notch high. Oxygen fine. Heart rate playing hopscotch. Aunt May handed me a notebook with flour on the cover. Write, she said. Write when it's quiet. Write when you want to yell. Paper will keep what you can't hold. I started a symptom log and a list called House Oddities. Number 1 read, why is the router's admin password no longer the one I set? Because when I tried June Garden number 7, it blinked back, access denied. The family chat turned syrup thick overnight. You're doing amazing. So grateful for you, Ev. Let's keep the vibes up. Victor posted a selfie by the dining room window with a caption about legacy and gratitude. He had mentioned me and added a winking emoji that felt like a finger in my chest. That morning he popped by with pastries and a folder marked house items. Tiny things, he said. Sign here for the dehumidifier, and this one acknowledges your brief custodian while May heals. He set a pin by my thumb and smiled like a waiter offering dessert. I'm not the custodian, I said. I'm family. He laughed. Exactly, he said, tapping the line with a pen that had already decided my name. Aunt May looked at the floor. Lena rubbed my shoulder and whispered, please don't make this a fight. I put the pin down like it weighed more than it did and asked Victor why the router password had changed. He said the tech updated it. What tech? A guy, he said. You were napping. That night, Mara texted, I'm crashing early, migraine, then stopped answering. 10 minutes later, the doorbell app pushed a clip. Someone in a hood stepped onto the porch and tried the knob, then turned to the camera without fear and dropped the hood. Victor. He looked left, right, then off-screen to where a car idled. The license plate reflection in the window gave me 3 characters and a question. I saved, tagged, and moved to the next thing because you can't breathe if you stare only at one wave. At 11:19 p.m. The shared email lit with a ride receipt. Mayfield cab, pick up at the corner near Victor's office, drop at our street, $11.60, tip left. At 11:23, Victor texted the family chat. In bed, finally, long day, with a photo of his couch and the game on. The photo's info showed 11:15 and a filter called Warm Home. The cab timestamp didn't care about filters. I wrote the times on an index card and slid it under the CO plug so I couldn't pretend not to see them when I checked the light. Then I lay awake listening for the house to name itself. At 2:06 a.m., the furnace kicked, my head swam, and the world narrowed like a hallway in a bad dream. I grabbed the wall and heard Victor's car idle outside again. In the morning, Lena brewed coffee to apologize for the night. Please don't turn this into a war, she said, sliding a mug toward me. Victor's trying. You always think in emergencies. I nodded because sometimes peace is a warm cup and a room that knows your name. But the index card under the CO plug looked at me like a witness who wouldn't sit down. I'll keep it simple, I said. No more midnight surprises. No more changed passwords without a text. No more papers I haven't slept on. Lena exhaled, relieved by the sound of rules even if they weren't hers. Aunt May added toast and her small sermon. Write your symptoms. Save receipts. Charge your phone before you accuse anyone. People forget how long a night is. I opened the house oddities list and added, doorbell missed motion 11:18 to 11:22, router admin changed, dehumidifier rental unknown, ride receipt contradicts couch photo. I copied my urgent care vitals into the notebook. SpO2 steady, heart rate volatile, pressure mildly high, EKG unremarkable, sheet titled anxiety. I have seen panic fill rooms like steam. This felt like something else tap dancing under the floorboards. Mara called from a number I didn't recognize. I'm okay, she said quickly. I just needed quiet. Trust the process. Don't spiral. I'm not spiraling, I said. I'm logging. Then log this, she said, softer. I love you. The call ended before I could ask where she was. Voicemail still lifted its shoulders and said unavailable. At noon, Victor texted, house walkthrough at 6? Paperwork after, super quick. I replied, only if May is present. Only if no signatures tonight. He sent a thumbs up. A minute later, the router blinked twice like a wink. I tried to nap before the walkthrough and woke to the smell of metal and the taste of a penny I'd never spent. I opened windows though the day was cold. The green light on the CO plug kept smiling like a child in a school photo. May met me at the door with her cane. We'll do this slow, she said. People who hurry decisions want your speed more than your consent. I kissed her forehead and thanked whatever makes some women braver than weather. Victor arrived with a fresh folder, a newer smile, and 2 pens that matched his tie. He opened the folder, and I smelled the furnace on paper. Victor began the tour like a realtor auditioning for a commercial. Just little fixes, he said, leading with that folder and a cedar cologne. The basement steps inhaled damp. He clicked a clamp light that turned the room into a stage, pointed to the rental dehumidifier humming like a polite tractor, and tapped a laminated sign he'd taped himself. Moisture management in progress. Sign the service acknowledgement and we'll be golden, he said. I crouched by the outlet where the carbon monoxide plug should have lived when the house still trusted us. It was empty. The detector had been moved to a power strip under a shelf, its face turned sideways toward a paint can. Green smiled at the wood. It's plugged in, Victor said, as if green meant good in every universe. I unplugged and held test. It chirped once, then blinked low power. The date stamped on the side read 4 summers ago. They last forever, he said. Like tuxedos. Upstairs, the kitchen window wouldn't latch. The stove's exhaust hood rattled, but didn't pull a napkin. The water tasted faintly of coins. On the back porch, a new padlock had appeared on the garage door. Security, Victor said. New wave of porch pirates. He produced a tiny key like a magician with a rabbit, jangled it, then slipped it into his pocket as if my hand had never moved. Back in the hall, I opened the router admin page because muscle memory sometimes outruns passwords. The login had a banner, FamilyNet, with a note labeled Maintenance by Victor 12:04 a.m. Parental controls showed a blacklist that included our ISP support line, 3 nearby HVAC companies, and the servers for my doorbell app. Sloppy enough to be arrogant. House protection, he said, reading my face. Scammers spike calls to elders at night. He had a line ready for everything except why Victor kept opening the router at midnight. My phone buzzed. A bank alert, card present purchase, Maple cab dispatch, $20, 0 to 11:01 p.m. Mara's card, vendor near our street. She had told me migraine, darkroom, no noise. I stared at the alert until the numbers felt like teeth. Lena squeezed my shoulder and whispered, please be kind. Kindness can choke you if you pour it faster than oxygen. Victor slid the pen toward me again and asked for one simple signature. I didn't sign. I asked for air. We opened windows until the curtains stood out like sails. Then I did the only thing that calms me. I made a map. Dates on the left, times down the middle, sources on the right, doorbell, router, bank, clinic, rideshare. Paper has a way of ironing a screaming room. By noon, I could see the shape of something that wanted to be named. Vitals. Urgent care SPO 298%, BP 138/88, HR 108, then 78, then 96, EKG normal. Symptoms. Dizziness on stairs, metallic taste, headaches on furnace cycle, sleep fragmentation every 90 minutes. Devices. CO plug chirps on test, blinks OK on idle, smoke detector fine. Furnace serviced, never, no sticker. Router. Admin changes at 12:04 a.m. and 3:19 a.m. Blacklist entries added within minutes of my texts about something's off. Rides. Maple cab near our street 11:01 p.m. Two small hardware charges 11:12 p.m. Aunt May sat with tea and the patience of a lighthouse. Now breathe, she said, and put numbers next to feelings. I wrote, fear 7 out of 10 at night, 3 out of 10 by day. Trust 5 out of 10 with Lena, January 10th with Victor, September 10th with May, February 10th with the house. I added a line I hated. Mara trust April 10th, status unknown. I walked the perimeter. In the garage, I found a step ladder under the flue pipe. Dust smudged like someone's handprints had told the metal a secret. The flue cap outside wore a ring of soot against new clean metal where old rust had been. Under the workbench, a blister pack for CO detector batteries lay empty beside a blister pack for earplugs. I photographed everything with the date burned in. At the hardware store, the clerk remembered Victor buying good padlocks and one of those plug-in beepers. He shrugged when I asked about furnace caps. Policy, he said. On the sidewalk, my head cleared the way a radio does when you finally find the station. I bought 2 independent CO detectors and a cheap air sampler with a paper strip you send to a lab. Back home, I placed one detector beside the furnace and one at the top of the stairs. The one downstairs chirped within 5 minutes, monotone and unwavering. I didn't panic, I verified. I opened every door, shut the furnace off, and watched the downstairs detector count down to silence. Then I turned the furnace back on and stood with my notebook open. At 2 minutes, the detector blinked. At 3 minutes, it chirped. At 4, it climbed. Upstairs, the detector at the landing stayed quiet, but my head did its old boat thing. Numbers are not feelings. They are flashlights that ask feelings to wait. The lab's paper strip needed 12 hours, so I ran a parallel test. The stupidly simple match trick by the water heater vent and at the kitchen hood. The flame bent wrong at the flue. The hood breathed in, but not out. I texted photos to myself and to a new group I named Sunlight. Me, Aunt May, and, after a minute of arguing with my heart, Lena. We're gathering facts, I wrote. No yelling. She replied with a single heart and a thank you. The what took shape. A house that became dangerous when closed, a detector that smiled sideways at wood, a flue touched recently, a router strangled into protection, key access that wasn't mine. Meanwhile, a second what kept knocking. Mara's last card used 3 blocks away while she told me she needed darkness and quiet. When I called, her voicemail smiled like Victor's green light. I finally wrote the sentence I had refused to write. My body didn't start this. The house did. Stakes rearranged themselves. Health. Obviously, oxygen doesn't negotiate. Money, because those tiny charges added up and the folder always arrived when my head rang. Control, because an acknowledgement signed while dizzy is still a signature. I took photos of the papers in Victor's folder while he ran to the car and saw enough soft verbs to choke a city. Hear it, steward, streamline, protect. At dusk, the downstairs detector screamed again. I shut the furnace, opened the back door, and stood in the frame breathing street air like medicine. Then I saw it. Fresh glove prints on the outside of the flue, oval and neat, right where a cap would be loosened or tightened. Somebody wanted this house to make me tired enough to stop asking why. Plans are how you turn fear into a list. I bought 2 fresh CO detectors from another store across town, so no one could claim bad batch. I set one in the basement, one in the hall, and a third in Aunt May's room because courage is not the same thing as recklessness. I also borrowed a neighbor's portable meter, the kind handymen use when landlords don't pick up. It read a number that made my knuckles cool. I photographed the display, then the clock, then my own face, so a future court couldn't confuse what day belonged to which reading. Next, comms. I moved the modem to a surge strip with a lock I controlled and set up a hotspot on my phone labeled Tea Kettle, so my devices could talk without going through Victor's blacklist. I took screenshots of the router's parental control page, the admin log showing his midnight edits, and the blacklist's exact entries. I emailed them to Sunlight with subject lines that read like affidavits. I called the city's housing inspector and requested a wellness check on an old furnace for an elder recovering from surgery. I asked if I could record. One party stayed, he said, bored. Record your cat if you want. I booked him for tomorrow at 4 and texted Lena. Please be here. I want you in the room with numbers. She sent. If this embarrasses Victor, he'll never forgive you. I typed. If this poisons May, I'll never forgive me, and pressed send. Mara texted from the unknown number again. Please stop escalating. Trust me. I wrote back, are you safe? The dots blinked, then died. I called once and let it ring until the voicemail quit pretending to care. Then I opened Victor's folder photos and read the page titled Temporary House Custodian Acknowledgement. In soft ink it promised streamlined decisions if the family appointed an acting steward through a brief private signing. I circled the sentence, signatures may be obtained during periods of house stress without delaying care. I slept on the couch with a window cracked and a camera pointed at the back door. At 2:41 a.m., the camera caught someone in gloves leaning a ladder against the flue. I woke to the chirp every 3-second song that means something real. The basement detector flashed like a small cop car. My head leaked light. I shut the furnace, opened 2 doors, and sat on the steps with my feet on the cool concrete waiting for the air to forgive me. When I stood, the room sloshed. The walls steadied me with quiet, patient paint. Victor arrived early for the walkthrough before the inspector, as if he'd been waiting around the corner with a stopwatch. You look rough, he said, sympathetic as a TV doctor. He produced a new folder and spoke fast. Let's just sign the custodian page while it's calm. So many moving parts. We'll streamline. It'll help May. You hate red tape. He always knew which drawer held my pride. Aunt May stepped between us with her cane like a traffic officer who had seen better years and worse drivers. We'll read every line, she said, out loud. Then we'll nap on it. Victor smiled with all his teeth and said, of course, then nudged the pen so it touched my thumb. My hands shook. Not fear. Too little air for too long. Anxiety can mimic poisoning. Victor stage whispered toward Lena, who had arrived with cinnamon rolls like they were a shield. Placebo detectors are a thing. Lena looked at me with eyes that wanted not to choose. I set the pen down, slid on my jacket, and walked outside until the winter bit the back of my throat and my head cleared enough to finish sentences. I called Mara again. Straight to voicemail. I texted, Inspector at 4. Please show up. Nothing. The doorbell app pinged with a still image that made the hair on my arms stand up. The same glove seam from last night now pressed against the glass, as if measuring the size of the lock. The frame after that showed empty porch, then just my neighbor's cat deciding we had nothing interesting to say. At 3:58 the city inspector pulled up in a white sedan with magnets on the doors and a coffee that smelled like competence. He shook May's hand, nodded to Lena, and looked at Victor's folder the way a mechanic looks at glitter paint on a dented fender. He asked us to stand back and turn the furnace on with his meter already awake. Numbers don't take sides, they take readings. The inspector's meter chirped at 30 seconds, again at 60, then held a note at 90 that made my mouth taste like a battery. We've got elevated CO when the unit cycles, he said. He killed the furnace, cracked the back door, and wrote the first line of a report. He climbed the ladder himself, looked at the flue cap, and scraped a finger along a ring of soot that should have been scattered, not fresh. Someone's been up here, he said, neutral as a clock. Victor laughed a soft PR laugh. Birds, maybe, he said. The inspector pointed at the glove prints I'd photographed. Birds were size large nitrile now, he asked. Lena winced, then looked at me like the floor had just admitted it was a ceiling all along. May sat, shoulders down at last. Thank you, she told the air as if it had rejoined the family. I asked permission and started recording. One party state, he said again, nodding at my phone. He followed the flue into the basement, traced the venting, and paused at the clamp light's cord. Who moved this detector? He asked. It's not near the breathing space. Victor lifted both hands. I tidied, he said. Looks nicer against the wall. The inspector didn't smile. He unplugged it, held the back to show the expiration date, and set it on the floor like an empty promise. Then he did something small that mattered more than his badge. He checked my symptom log. This lines up with cycling, he said, tapping the times. He circled 2 entries at 2:06 a.m. and 2:41 a.m. You shouldn't be in here at night, he said to May. Nor should anyone ask you to sign anything indoors until this is addressed. Victor leaned against the doorframe like a man waiting for a commercial break to end. So we're all set for the meeting after, he said. Quick signatures for stewardship. While we're together? The inspector looked at him the way surgeons look at YouTube chiropractors. He posted a hazard notice and snapped a bright tag to the furnace. We moved to the dining room because truth needed chairs. I connected my laptop to the TV and laid out the map. Doorbell stills with timestamps. Router admin logs with maintenance by Victor 12:04 a.m. Blacklist entries blocking HVAC. My hotspot labeled tea kettle appearing exactly when internet outage texts hit the family chat. Then the camera clip from 2:41 a.m. Ladder, gloves, outline against the winter sky. The inspector watched and wrote without commentary, saving his breath for sentences that mattered. Context, Victor said, palms up. We've had break-ins in the neighborhood. I adjusted settings to protect elders. This house is old. It breathes weird. Let's not weaponize coincidence. I advanced to the page from his folder. Temporary house custodian acknowledgement. The line, signatures may be obtained during periods of house stress to prevent decision fatigue. The inspector squinted. Who drafted this? He asked. A template, Victor said. We all love templates. I clicked open email filters on the shared account. Forward any subject with appointment, inspector, or furnace to archive. I clicked a voicemail forward to a number I didn't recognize. The label on that number in Victor's phone read errands. Lena leaned forward. You forwarded his messages? She asked. For efficiency, Victor said. He's busy. The room made the quiet sound people make when they realized their breath had been borrowed. Then I played the lab voicemail I'd missed while we were in the basement. Preliminary strip positive for elevated CO when enclosed, the text said. Recommend remediation and medical evaluation. I set it next to the inspector's meter reading from 20 minutes ago. Numbers held hands across devices and dared excuses to keep talking. What about Mara? Lena whispered. Victor's eyes flicked. I put the bank alerts on screen. Maple cab near our street at 11:01 p.m. Her card, then a charge at a pharmacy the next morning 2 towns over. I added her text from the unknown number. Trust me, stop escalating. My mouth was dry enough to creak. Where is she, Victor? I asked, steady now that air had joined us again. He stared at the orange tag and finally chose to speak. It wasn't malicious, Victor began, which is how malicious tries to buy a discount. The house needed work, decisions needed to be made, and Evan, no offense, spirals. I streamlined communications. I asked Mara to give him space until we stabilized things. He swallowed. A short custodianship would have let me move quickly on remediation and refinancing. It was for May. For me, May said, eyebrows lifting until they looked like punctuation. The inspector kept writing. Lena stared at the folder as if it might unfold and bite. I advanced the slide with the line, signatures may be obtained during periods of house stress, and let silence translate. Where is she? I asked again. Victor's jaw shifted. At her sister's, he said. I suggested it. New number, so he couldn't pull her into the whirlwind. She's fine. Everyone's fine. He said find the way people say it when they hope the word will build a bridge where they burned one. The inspector cleared his throat. Here's what's not fine, he said, tapping his clipboard. Elevated CO on cycle. Expired detector relocated to a useless outlet. Evidence of recent flu interference. Router settings preventing emergency contacts. I'm issuing a hazard tag. No occupancy in affected areas until remediation. If I see signatures pushed while this tag is active, I will note it in my report. Victor's charm slipped a half-inch. We can manage remediation privately, he said. We don't need a circus. The inspector handed him a list of licensed companies and told him to choose one that answers phones day and night. By evening, the orange tag glowed like a stoplight in our hallway. I packed a go-bag for May and moved her to Lena's for 2 nights. I slept on my couch with the window open under 3 blankets and a plan for morning calls. Work called, too. My supervisor asked if I needed days. Take them, she said when I hesitated. Come back breathing. Family chat detonated in careful phrases. Misunderstandings. Let's de-escalate. We love everyone. I turned off notifications and labeled a new box towels because folding was the only language my hands trusted. At midnight, the doorbell pinged once and a car idled at the curb. We moved like a small army with better manners. Lena and I boxed May's essentials and made her room at Lena's into a camp with plants and a good lamp. The remediation company came at 8, shut the gas, tagged the cap, and scheduled a full clean and test. The tech showed me soot where soot should not be and used words that don't need translation. Blocked, dangerous, reportable. I signed the work order with a pen that belonged to me and took a photo of my signature because old houses are museums of almosts. I wrote rules on a sheet titled 2-key rule and taped it inside a kitchen cabinet. No signatures without 2 relatives present. No papers signed indoors until the furnace passes. No router changes without logging. Recordings when allowed. Sleep before decisions. I added a line for money. No shared cards. No small hardware runs. No services without written approval. Lena read it and whispered, "This makes my lungs bigger." Mara's sister emailed from a neutral address. "She's safe. She needs time. Please stop writing to the unknown number." I replied with 3 sentences. I will not contact her privately. She may contact me by email regarding belongings. I hope she's well. I closed my laptop before my fingers did a dumber thing. Therapy started on Tuesday in a room that smelled like books and soap. I told the therapist I graded days like vital signs. She asked for numbers. I gave her decimals. We built a morning that kept me from drifting. Window, water, walk, something warm, 1 friend, 1 task. May called each night to say goodnight to the house as if it were a stubborn grandchild. Victor texted once, "Let me fix this," and I put the message in sunlight and did not reply. The inspector returned with a clean meter after remediation and rehung the tag upside down like a little victory flag. He signed his report, gave me a copy for our records, and nodded at the cabinet rules. "That's how you stop future fires," he said, practical as a wrench. I slept 8 hours with the furnace silent and woke up grateful for boring air. At 9, a certified letter arrived addressed to me from Holt's Stewardship, LLC. The letter threatened civility with stationery. "We regret the disruption," it read, "and propose a structured stewardship to ensure timely decisions." It contained the same soft verbs and a deadline that hoped I would confuse dates with destiny. I filed it under sunlight and wrote the only reply I could send without oxygen debt. No custodianship. Independent counsel retained. All future communications by email. What did I learn? That bodies are better historians than families. That green lights can lie if you point them at wood. That trust the process is useful only if the process is honest. That a house can become a character when people use it as a stage. That love without clarity becomes theater, and theater without ventilation makes you faint. Viewers always ask what to do if the floor tilts under their feet. Here is my simple list, written in marker, smudged by soup, taped near the kettle. Photograph devices where they live. Include timestamps and your watch and frame. Test with redundancy. If one detector smiles, buy a second opinion. Keep a symptom log with times that match machines. Secure communications you control. Hotspots beat blacklists in a pinch. Invite a neutral witness when numbers meet people. Read footers and filters. Version histories confess louder than mouths. Sleep before signatures. Fatigue is a notary nobody hired. Put rules on cabinets, not in chats. Kitchens outlast threads. Accept help that brings receipts. Refuse help that brings pens. Choose breath over peace. You can make peace later if you're breathing. May's furnace is clean now. Her laugh sounds like dishes again. Lena and I speak plainly and hug slowly. Mara hasn't called, and that is a sentence I can survive. Victor will find another audience for his stewardship, or he'll learn to live without microphones. On my fridge, a photo from last summer. May in her garden, Lena barefoot on the grass. Reminds me what air feels like when no one is performing. When the certified letters twin arrives, I'll send the same answer and keep breathing.